This video is sponsored by Storyblocks. You need a professional profile picture for your brand, social media, or just for fun. Problem is, you don't have access to a photo studio or have an expensive camera. So well, today I'm here to tell you that gear is not actually an excuse, it's just your lack of skills. That sounded much more rude than it needed to. Today I'll show you how to make a good-looking portrait of yourself without using cameras, without using lights, just household items, an iPhone, and Photoshop. Let's get to it. Don't get me wrong, you do need some stuff for this video, just nothing super expensive. What you'll need today is a medium to large size mirror, a smartphone that isn't from the Stone Ages, a cheap tripod or simply another person, and sunlight. The first steps include putting together a little setup. Using a mirror, we can redirect the light to fake having multiple light sources. To get the ideal result, here's what I'm aiming for. Ideally, in a studio, you'd want to have one key light, a rim or backlight, and an ambient or fill light. The key light usually is a bright, strong light coming from ahead, usually slightly at like an angle. The fill light or ambient light fills up the shadows slightly so they're not fully black. And then the backlight creates a nice rim light effect around the subject. We, since we're broke, only have the sun, but there is still a way we can get all three different lights in here. If you're in a white or just bright room, the fill light is basically already there. The light bounces off the walls in the room, making for a relatively even ambient light coming from all sides. If your room has a big window, that will be your key light. You want to stay away from direct sunlight though, so try and find a window that doesn't face the sun. The closer you get to the window, the more directional the light will be. Finally, for that backlight, we'll be using the mirror. You probably guessed it already. We'll place it behind us, finding the best angle to reflect the light onto the other side of your face. Try a few different setups to see the different results. If you have another person to take the picture, that's great. I just so happen to be all alone, so I'm using a tripod I once got for like 20 bucks. I'd also recommend using an even backdrop, of course, but just to show that it's also possible without, I'll do without. I do recommend putting the phone further away, possibly using the different lenses to experiment. Typically, the further away, the more flattering and realistic the face proportions are. And then, well, once you think you've got some nice shots, it's time to take them to Photoshop.
Opening Photoshop!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Photoshop. No fancy editing today, this is just to show you how I'm going to do this. So I'm currently in the Photoshop beta, which means we have access to the brand new cutting out features or remove background features, because as you can see, if I click this, wait for it to load, it does a better job than it used to. Still not perfect, but this is definitely a good start. We just add a black backdrop so it's a bit more clear what we need to get rid of. Then I will simply grab a brush and remove all of the excess bullshit that we don't need, just around the edges here. The shirt is pretty much fine apart from this here, and then the hair is actually surprisingly good. So I might just actually, apart from some areas, just keep most of that. There you go, just all around, and then you have yourself cut out. Nice and easy. Of course, if you don't want to use the Photoshop beta, you can always just do it by hand, using the pen tool here, going around it like that, or any other way you prefer. There are plenty, so choose the one you like. Then let's convert this into a smart object, because guess what? We're gonna add a camera raw filter already. Filter, camera raw filter. Now, this is where the magic happens, as always. In here, there's a bunch of things we can do. First of all, decrease the exposure a little bit, maybe in my case. Increase the whites for some slight contrast in there. Now, mind you, all of these steps are going to be very different for you because your picture is probably going to have different lighting conditions and in general just look different. So don't copy me. Try and get the same results using different sliders. If we increase shadows, you're getting back some of that detail in the dark areas. Then most importantly, we need to make it a little bit colder because as you can tell, the white balance is a bit off. Here you go. Slightly better. Maybe even darker and add some more whites. Oh, starting to look a lot better already. Then let's go to effects and increase the clarity and texture a little bit. And what you'll probably see happen now is it's going to get crispy, but also if you zoom in, you're going to get some weird artifacts. Now, here's a very important thing. This is a functional portrait, meaning it's going to be used for profile pictures, very small images that you will never see blown up or big. That means none of that detail you're actually going to ever see. A great example is my own profile pictures. They're very choppy, they're not really that nice close up, but if you see them small, they look pretty poppy. And that is exactly what we're going to try and do here as well. So don't worry about that. Make sure it looks nice when it's small. So, of course, if you do this too much, Like that is excessive. So take it easy with the top one, but you get the idea. It's just getting a bit more crisp, a bit more definition. Then you can do a similar thing over a detail to make it a bit sharper. As you can see, that just crisps it up just a little bit more. And as you can tell, that is definitely a lot better already. You can always do too is play around with the colors individually. I always like to increase oranges because I'm very pale and you don't really want that in these kind of images. So just like this, ever so slightly increasing that saturation. That is really nice. Now let's go and hit OK and on to the next step, which is kind of smoothing up the skin a little bit. Ctrl-Alt-Shift-E, turn that into a smart object. Go to Filter, Blur, and Surface Blur. Now this is a very cheap way to do this, but I'm trying to use as basic techniques as possible so you can follow along just fine, even if you never really use Photoshop. So let's go ahead and very softly paint back on this mask I just hid, just really softly on some of these bigger areas to make it slightly softer. Here you go. Now, you definitely don't want to go too far with this because it's going to look very artificial. We don't want that. Also, definitely stay away from the hair, but especially here in the neck, that can really use some softening up. There you go. So you might not like this, but it's optional. You can do that. So that is a very good start. Now onto the background. Before we keep going though, a quick word for the sponsor of today, Storyblocks. Now, I don't know about you guys, but very often when I'm editing my videos, sometimes I randomly think something's missing. Maybe some background footage, maybe some sound effects, some overlays, something to make it just a bit more spicy. It's why my videos recently have been looking like this. That is where Storyblocks can save you every single time. They've got a huge library of stock footage, audio, motion graphics, and templates, all royalty-free. It's also super easy to find and use. Instead of wasting half my life looking for good stock footage that is actually good, I can now just hit up Storyblocks and say, hey, I need this, and they have it. You can just grab what you need and get straight back to what really is important, the work. If you're making videos, this really is the lifesaver you need. Make sure to hit the link down below to check it out. And then for now, big thanks to them for sponsoring this video. On to our video. I'm gonna make a brand new document here. 2000 by 2000 pixels is fine. This is also fine. Everything is fine. So do create. And I'll go and drag in my original photo PSD. Then make sure by right clicking on the background, this is set to black. Because look, what I always like to do to make sure it's nicely centered for a circle is make a circle. Put that exactly in the center like this. Drag it out to the edges. Then hold Control, click that shape. Add a new mask using a solid color, then make that nice and black, hit OK. Then select the mask and hit Ctrl-I to invert it. Then you get this. If you then get rid of the blue circle, you get the illusion of what it might look like when it is around. Of course, this is just a mask, so it's not actually gone. It's just for the illusion. That means now you can very easily just kind of move this around until it's perfectly in the center. For the eye in the center, not actually in the center, for your eyes. That is always so much more important than whether or not it's actually centered. So I think this is decent. Oh, hello. As you guys know, I always like green, so I will use a green background here as well. You can do whatever you want, but mind you, it will make a big difference as far as the rim lights color go, but that comes later. So anyway, I'm just gonna go with a nice, slightly dark green color, like so. And I'll duplicate this and make the top one a little bit brighter, like something like this. And I'll go and invert the mask, grab a nice big soft round brush, make sure the flow is 100 and simply click once about in the middle. So then you have a very nice round gradient. And if you remove this, it is square. So you can use them for both, shapes. Now what I'll do to make sure I'm slightly more integrated with that green color, I'll go to color balance, flip that to me as a subject, and green has a slight yellowish tint, of course, to it. So I'll slightly increase the yellow and the red, maybe not too far, and green, then go to highlights, same thing here, a bit more yellow, a little bit more green, maybe even the shadows. And I'll go here, set the normal to color to make sure it only affects the colors and not the luminosity. Zooming out, that is really quite nice. Maybe it's a bit too much. Simply decrease the fill here to make it slightly more nuanced. Okay, good. Then we'll go and add a highlight. Adjustments, hue and saturation, clip that to the subject. Now, if you have a red background, obviously you want to make this red instead of green, but I'm going to go with green. Increase the saturation, make sure it's on top. Slightly more yellow for me here. Really nice and saturated, so it kind of matches that backdrop. I'll go and hit Ctrl-I to invert, grab a brush again, and we're going to paint on the edges that already have a highlight. First, decrease the flow to something low, something you feel comfortable with, and then we'll simply paint over these areas very softly. Of course, we already have a bit of a highlight here. You can go a bit crazy by adding some that aren't really there yet, or at least not as much. Be careful, because you don't want to go too far with that, at least yet. For example, over here, I kind of want to have a highlight as well. We'll have to add that in just a minute. This is just really enhancing the highlights that are already there. Also on the shoulder here. Very nice. And of course, around the very edge of the ears, which also seem to be illuminated, and these parts of the hair. Really make sure not to go too crazy with this, because you can easily overdo it. Trust me, that is not going to look very nice. I used to do that all the time, but I've kind of grown out of it, I think, which is good. We all have to go through that phase, so it's fine. But try and take it easy. Here you go. This is already so much better. You could also try, since the ear is a bit in the shadow, just add some green tones all over it. That seems a bit more natural. Here you go, before and after. And then afterwards, you can always play with the saturation a bit more. Maybe even the luminosity, but I'm not sure that's going to do much good in this case. Very, very nice. Now, you could make that even more intense by adding a exposure adjustment layer on top. Clipping that again and copying this mask by holding Alt and dragging it over. So then it's the same thing on it. And then simply increase the exposure. That creates a bit of a, I don't know, just like a warmer effect. But I am noticing I don't like that to illuminate the entire ear, so let's get rid of that on this mask. Then I'll copy the hue and saturation layer again, put that on top, clip it, get rid of the mask for just a sec. And what I'll do now is I will actually increase the lightness to about here. Again, hide the mask, grab a brush. Because look, around these edges, there's a very thin, dark line. You could, of course, just erase that on the mask. You can also do this to make it very nice and crisp. Just a super bright little highlight. Once again, you will not see this in the final result because it's way too small. But I just can't leave this be because I'm a huge nitpick. That's how it is. So that's before and that is after. It's a tiny change. It just makes it a bit more, you know, clean. And also, since this is black and light doesn't really enter on it, you can also paint some of this over here. Now, this is going to require some artistic freedom and some artistic vision to know where to paint this. Don't go too crazy with it again. But look, this can definitely help to kind of increase the effect before and after. Really nice. Maybe even slightly on the other side as well, just on the very, very edge. Also, make sure to remove the mask so you don't forget the parts that are hidden. I almost just did that. Here you go. Because I don't know if there are any platforms that show your profile picture square, but if there are at some point, you're covered. Here you go. That is really quite nice. Let's bring this one back. Now, you can really go as far as you want to go with this. For example, you can go and add some brightness to your eyes by doing something like this, hiding the mask and then just painting it back. I like to only do the lower part of the iris and maybe some of these reflections in the eyes. Same thing on the other side. This typically makes it a bit more dynamic. No, not dynamic. Just a bit of a deeper result, a bit nicer and more dreamy. That's maybe a bit much. Good thing we can just decrease this. So yeah, there you have it. Then once again, what I always like to do is hide this. Ctrl-Alt-Shift-D. No, E. There you go. Again, smart object. And again, go to camera raw filter to once more polish this up. Because this may seem fine on the big screen, but trust me, when it's small, you want it to pop even more. I'll show you the difference in just a sec. First of all, whites can go a bit higher again. Exposure a bit down. Maybe some contrast could be good. Trying some more clarity here. I know this looks like it's too much, but trust me. Some more detail, sharpening that up even further. And just like that, I think this is really, really good for something we shot on an iPhone. And I also spent a ridiculously short amount of time editing this. So really altogether, this is probably the perfect budget option to use. Now let's go and see this when it's displayed small on your profile. Because of the crispiness and contrastfulness, it stands out beautifully. It's the reason I always stuck with bright colors as well. It just works. And guess what? What you're seeing now is an even more crisp version than the one we just made. I added some more contrast, some more clarity, and even darkened up some of the shadows. But you don't really notice this as much until you see it close up. And even with different colors like I'm showing here, it still works wonders in my opinion. There's just something so superior about having your face here instead of a logo that doesn't really tell anyone anything. Your face is you, it's expressive, it speaks to people. I wholeheartedly believe that creators should never have anything other than their face in their profile pictures. Not all in this style, of course, but in some shape or form. I thought this would just be a fun thing to experiment with, show you how I typically edit my own photos. And big thanks to Storyblocks for sponsoring today's video. And then for today, I guess that's it. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, hit the bell not to miss a single future video, and then I hope I'll see you in the next one.